The sun burned low over the desert, casting long, jagged shadows across the rocky landscape. The wind carried fine sand that stung Elia's face and filled the crevices of his hut. He had lived alone here for almost 5 years, in a small, weathered shelter built from scavenged metal and stone. The desert was cruel, unrelenting, but it had taught him resilience. Food was scarce, water scarcer, yet he managed. Every day was a test of endurance, a test he had grown accustomed to. Elias was adjusting the small water container near the door when he noticed something strange on the horizon. A faint shimmer, almost like heat waves rising from the sand, moved in a way that did not belong to the wind. At first he thought it was a mirage, another trick of the desert. But then he saw a figure crawling, barely lifting itself from the ground. It was human-like in shape, but the skin had an iridescent glow, faint and bluish under the dying sunlight. Elia's heart skipped. He hesitated. The desert was unforgiving, and strangers were rare and dangerous. Yet something about the figure's weakness, the way it moved, desperate and trembling, stirred a compassion in him he could not ignore. Without thinking, he grabbed a water flask and stepped outside, squinting against the fading light. The figure, or rather the being, was barely alive. It had long limbs, unusually thin but elegant, and its skin shimmered with delicate patterns that pulsed faintly with every breath. Its chest heaved, shallow and uneven, and its hands clawed at the sand as if trying to pull itself forward. Elias dropped to his knees beside it, gently raising its head. "Here, take this," he murmured, tilting the water flask to let the alien drink. Its lips, or what resembled lips, parted in a small, weak gesture. Elias could not understand its language, but the gratitude in its eyes was clear. The being drank, trembling with exhaustion, then collapsed into the sand. Elias lifted it carefully, wrapping it in a blanket he had prepared for himself against the cold nights. He carried it into the hut, laying it on a makeshift bed of cloth and padding. The alien's breathing was shallow, its body weak, but it was alive. Elias sighed, wiping sweat from his brow. Helping someone like this could be dangerous. Aliens were unpredictable, and some were known to hunt humans or treat them as intruders, but he could not leave it to die. Not in his desert, not on his watch. Night began to fall, and the desert transformed into a landscape of deep shadows and eerie silence. Elias moved slowly around the hut, fetching water and small rations of dried food, setting them nearby. He had no idea if the being could eat what humans ate, but he offered it anyway. He built a small fire outside to keep predators away, the flames casting flickering light across the sand. Hours passed. The alien shifted slightly but did not awaken. Elias watched over it, alert to every sound, the howl of the desert winds, the scraping of rocks, the distant calls of unseen creatures. He wondered where it had come from. Perhaps it was from a nearby settlement, or maybe it had been traveling alone. Either way, it had ended up here, exhausted and dying, and now its life was in his hands. As midnight approached, Elias thought about the risks. If the aliens' people discovered it missing, they might not take it lightly. Their pursuit could be immediate and deadly. Yet he also thought about his own life. He had survived years in this desert not by hiding, but by being resourceful and cautious. He could protect himself, and maybe, just maybe, this act of compassion would not cost him his life. The alien's eyes flickered open, revealing iridescent colors that shifted in the firelight. Elias froze, unsure how it would react. It stared at him, not with anger, but with something else. Pain, yes, but also recognition. He extended a hand, palm open, as a gesture of peace. The alien moved its own hand weakly, hovering above his, and then slowly rested it against his. The gesture was small, almost imperceptible, but Elias felt a strange connection, as if a bridge had been built between them despite the vast differences in form and origin. The night grew colder, and Elias wrapped the alien in additional blankets. He murmured quietly, telling it there was nothing to fear here, though he knew it probably could not understand the words. Still, tone and intent mattered. The alien made soft, almost musical hums, a language he could not decipher, but the sound was calming in its own way. He imagined it was a thank you, though he could not be certain. By the time the moon rose high over the desert, the alien was breathing more steadily. Elias had stayed awake the entire night, keeping watch, adjusting the fire, and listening for any signs of danger. Predators came close, curious or hungry, but Elias drove them off with sticks and fire. Through it all, he felt a strange admiration for this being, fragile, yet still fighting to survive in this harsh world. As dawn approached, the desert's silence was broken by the faint sound of movement, distant yet deliberate. Elias stiffened. The alien stirred, and the subtle tension in its movements suggested awareness of something beyond his perception. Elias stepped outside, scanning the horizon, but saw nothing yet. The desert could be deceptive at dawn, shadows masking the approach of creatures far larger and stronger than him. He returned to the hut, checking the alien once more. It had recovered slightly, enough to sit up with support. Elias offered water again, and it drank without hesitation. He noticed the glow of its skin was brighter, almost pulsating rhythmically as if the being's health had improved. There was a strange beauty in its form, the way light danced across its body, and despite the danger of the situation, Elias felt awe rather than fear. Suddenly the alien made a sharp gesture, pointing toward the horizon, then toward the sky, and finally gesturing back at Elias. He understood even without language. It was warning him. Something was coming, someone or something was approaching, and it was connected to the alien. Elias' pulse quickened. The desert had many secrets, and now one of them had found its way to him. He prepared quickly, gathering a few tools and makeshift weapons. Nothing he had was truly designed for battle against something potentially more powerful, but he had his wits and his cunning. He positioned fire torches around the hut, sharpened stakes, and traps using sand and debris. Every movement was calculated, every gesture cautious. Elias knew that compassion could come at a cost, but he was determined not to let it be his life. The alien woman, he still did not know her name, watched silently, her glowing eyes reflecting both fear and hope. Elias realized that the decision to help her had already set events into motion he could not control. Whatever came would test not only his survival skills, but also the very essence of what it meant to be human. Courage, morality, and quick thinking would be his only weapons. The first light of dawn painted the desert in muted oranges and purples. Elias felt a strange, calm settle over him despite the tension. He had done what he believed was right. He had given water to a dying being, saved a life. Now, whatever came, he would face it with honesty and integrity. And then, a distant rumble caught his attention. It was faint at first, like the shifting of sand, but growing steadily. Elias froze. The alien's eyes widened, and it made another series of sharp, insistent gestures. Elias understood immediately this was no random desert predator. Whatever was coming knew exactly where to find them. Elias' mind raced. He had never encountered anything like this before. He had survived sandstorms, desert predators, and isolation, but now he faced a force that he could not yet see or measure. The only thing he knew for certain was that the desert's silence was about to be broken. The sun rose fully, casting its harsh light on the sand, revealing movement along the horizon. Tall, imposing figures approaching, their silhouettes unlike anything human. Elias tightened his grip on his spear-like tool and took a deep breath. He had helped a dying alien woman, and now, by dawn, he was about to meet the consequences of that choice. The desert, harsh and unyielding, had given him a test unlike any before. Courage, ingenuity, and compassion would be his only allies. The desert wind shifted, carrying the approaching sound closer. Elias braced himself, ready for whatever came next. The alien woman's eyes met his, and for a fleeting moment he saw not fear but trust. And in that trust he found a new strength, the knowledge that doing what was right might be dangerous, but it could also be the first step toward something greater, something he could not yet imagine. And then the silhouettes began to take form, the first signs of alien warriors appearing against the pale morning sun, surrounding the small hut that had become a sanctuary. Elias knew in that moment that the next hours would test every skill he possessed, every ounce of courage, and the very heart of what it meant to be human. The first signs of movement on the horizon had grown clearer. Elias' heart pounded in his chest, but his mind worked quickly. The alien woman who had yet to give him her name watched him silently, her glowing eyes sharp with awareness. Her gestures were urgent, pointing toward the approaching figures and then back to him, warning him to stay ready. Elias did not fully understand her language, but the meaning was unmistakable. They were coming for her. He adjusted the makeshift defenses around his hut. The stakes in the sand were simple, but they could trip someone, slow them down. The fire torches flickered, casting dancing shadows across the rough walls. Elias grabbed a long metal rod he had fashioned as a spear. It was crude, but it was better than nothing. He had faced predators before, and while these beings seemed stronger, perhaps he could use his environment to his advantage. The figures on the horizon were taller than any human. Their bodies were muscular and lean, covered in armor that shimmered faintly in the morning light. They moved with a precision and grace that suggested discipline, not random wandering. Elias could see weapons strapped to their bodies, long, glowing blades and tools he could not name. The desert had given him many challenges, but nothing like this. He crouched near the door of his hut, trying to appear smaller, less threatening, but the alien woman remained calm, almost confident. She gestured toward the approaching warriors, then to herself, then to Elias. He began to understand her meaning. These warriors were her people, and they were here because she was here. Helping her had alerted them, and now they would judge him. Elias took a deep breath. He had never faced beings like this before, but he knew something fundamental about survival, calmness, and observation. He studied the approaching figures, noting their movement patterns. They did not rush forward recklessly. They advanced slowly, deliberately. This suggested intelligence, not blind aggression. Perhaps there was a chance to survive if he could communicate or show intent. One of the warriors stopped at a distance, taller and more heavily armored than the rest. It raised a hand, and the others followed suit. Elias froze, unsure how to respond. The alien woman made a series of quick gestures, pointing to him and then to the warrior. Elias realized they wanted to know why he had helped her. He dropped his spear, placing his hands in front of him in a gesture of peace. He stepped forward cautiously, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. The warrior's armor glinted in the sunlight, and Elias felt a mix of awe and fear. These were not ordinary beings. They were elite protectors, likely trained from birth to fight and defend. Elias began to gesture, pointing to the alien woman, then to himself, then to his heart. He drew a line in the sand with a stick, connecting the two of them as if to say, "I helped her." "I meant no harm." The alien woman watched him carefully, her body still weak but her eyes alive with intelligence. She made a soft hum, almost musical, and the warrior's hand twitched slightly, as if reacting to the sound. The alien warrior leader tilted its head, observing him. Elias felt a strange tension in the air, a silent conversation happening between the alien woman and her people that he could not hear but could sense. Minutes passed, each one stretching like hours. Elias kept his hands visible, showing he carried nothing dangerous. The warrior took a step forward, then another, until it was closer, studying him intently. Suddenly, the warrior dropped to one knee, a gesture that Elias interpreted as respect, or at least acknowledgement. The other warriors mirrored the action. Elias exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. His intuition had been correct. Their interest was in the alien woman's welfare, not in attacking him blindly. Helping her had been dangerous, but it had also earned him a chance to survive this encounter. He gestured toward the alien woman again, and she reached out, touching his arm gently. Elias felt a pulse of warmth, a silent thank you. The warriors observed, their eyes sharp, analyzing his every movement. Elias realized that they were not only assessing his intent, but also his character. In a way, they were judging him by the actions of humanity itself, compassion, courage, and honesty. The leader warrior rose slowly, then made a series of gestures that Elias struggled to interpret. He noticed the alien woman responding with similar gestures, nodding or moving her hands in certain patterns. Elias mimicked their motions as best he could, showing understanding. The gestures seemed to form a dialogue, a bridge between two very different species. While the silent conversation unfolded, Elias glanced around the desert. The morning sun had revealed the harshness of the terrain, jagged rocks, deep crevices, and endless sand. He knew he could use this to his advantage if necessary. The hut was small, but its walls were solid enough to provide cover. The stakes and torches could slow down anyone unfamiliar with the terrain. Elias began planning contingencies, even as he focused on communicating peace. The alien woman began to move more confidently, her strength returning gradually. Elias offered water again, and she drank without hesitation. He noticed the glow of her skin pulsed more steadily now, as if the energy within her body had returned slightly. Elias realized that the simple act of helping her had not only saved her life, but had also shifted the balance of this encounter. They were no longer strangers. They were connected by an unspoken bond. The warriors began to circle the hut, keeping a careful distance. Elias did not attempt to hide, but he remained alert, observing every movement. The alien woman pointed toward the desert, then back at Elias, indicating that these beings could sense his skills, his intentions, and his humanity itself. Elias understood that this moment was a test. How he acted would determine whether he was seen as a threat or an ally. As the sun climbed higher, Elias realized that he had only a few options. He could attempt to flee, but the desert offered little cover, and the warriors were disciplined and fast. He could fight, but that would almost certainly end in disaster. Or he could continue to show empathy, intelligence, and respect, proving that humans could act honorably even in dangerous circumstances. He chose the third option. Elias began to demonstrate simple tasks, showing the warriors how he had built his hut, how he stored water, and how he protected himself from the desert's dangers. He pointed to the stakes, the fire, and the metal tools he had fashioned from scraps. The warriors observed closely, their posture relaxed slightly. They were learning from him just as he was learning from them. The alien woman made a series of gestures, drawing symbols in the sand. Elias watched carefully, recognizing patterns that suggested her clan's hierarchy, their code of honor, and their concern for her safety. He copied the symbols crudely, showing he understood their meaning. The warriors paused, studying his attempts. Elias felt a subtle shift in their demeanor. They were no longer just assessing him, they were beginning to respect him. Time passed slowly. The desert sun grew hotter, and the shimmering air made the warriors appear even more formidable. Elias remained patient, using gestures, drawings, and demonstrations to communicate. The alien woman rested, her breathing steady, her strength slowly returning. Elias realized that his courage and compassion had not gone unnoticed. They were being evaluated not only for what they did, but for who they were. Finally, after what felt like hours, the leader warrior approached Elias directly. It extended a hand, not in aggression but in acknowledgement. Elias hesitated for a moment, then mirrored the gesture. Their hands did not touch, but the action was symbolic. The alien woman hummed softly, a sound Elias could feel more than hear, and the other warriors relaxed slightly. The desert seemed to exhale with them. Elias understood that this standoff had shifted. What had begun as a moment of extreme danger was now a tentative truce. The alien warriors were still alert, still powerful, but they recognized that Elias had acted with integrity and bravery. He had faced fear and uncertainty, and had chosen compassion over caution, morality over self-interest. Elias took a step back, giving the warriors space, while the alien woman rose to her feet with support. Her skin glowed faintly, a testament to the healing that had begun. Elias offered her a nod, a silent acknowledgement of trust and respect. She returned it, and for a brief moment all three parties, human, alien, and warrior, stood in mutual understanding. The desert stretched endlessly around them, harsh and unforgiving, but in that small circle there was balance. Elias realized that this encounter was more than survival. It was a lesson in connection, in courage, and in the quiet strength of humanity. The alien warriors had come to judge, but they had found something worthy of respect. Elias felt a mixture of relief and awe. He had survived the night, faced beings stronger and faster than himself, and yet had maintained his humanity. He knew the danger was not over. The desert held many secrets, and the alien warrior's curiosity could still lead to conflict. But for now, there was a fragile peace. As the sun rose higher, Elias and the alien woman shared a moment of understanding. Words were unnecessary. Their actions spoke louder than any language. He had given water to a dying alien woman, and in doing so, he had demonstrated the qualities that made humans remarkable: compassion, ingenuity, and courage. And while the alien warriors circled, observing, Elias knew that the morning had changed everything. He was no longer simply a man surviving in the desert. He was part of a story larger than himself, a story that spanned worlds and species, bound by the simple yet powerful act of kindness. The desert wind shifted again, carrying with it the faint sound of movement. Elias tightened his grip on his makeshift spear, ready to act if necessary. The alien woman stood beside him, her glowing eyes scanning the horizon. Together they faced the unknown, aware that the choices of one night could shape the days to come. The sun climbed higher, burning through the thin desert haze, casting a harsh golden light over the hut and the surrounding dunes. Elias stood at the door, spear in hand, watching the alien warriors as they moved deliberately around his small sanctuary. Their tall, imposing forms reflected strength and discipline, but he could sense that they were not here to attack blindly. Still, he remained alert. One wrong move could turn respect into conflict in a heartbeat. The alien woman stirred beside him. Her glowing skin pulsed faintly, brighter than the night before, and her movements were stronger, more purposeful. Elias had started to understand her gestures, her small hums, and the way she pointed at objects to communicate ideas. Though they could not speak each other's language, they were developing a rhythm of understanding, small but significant. The warrior leader approached again, this time moving closer to Elias. Its movements were measured, its glowing blade sheathed, signaling no immediate threat. Elias mirrored the warrior, keeping his hands visible, showing that he carried no hidden weapons. The alien woman stepped slightly forward, indicating that she was the reason they had come. Elias realized that these warriors were her protectors, bound by a strict code to safeguard her life. Elias took a deep breath and began to gesture again, pointing to the alien woman, then to himself, then drawing lines in the sand connecting them. He tried to convey that he had helped her out of compassion, not fear or greed. The warrior paused, tilting its head as if processing his actions. Elias held his gaze steady, showing calmness, confidence, and honesty. After a long moment, the warrior leader made a series of sharp gestures toward the alien woman. She responded with gestures of her own, then turned to Elias. He watched closely and understood. They were asking if he would defend himself and her if needed. Elias nodded slowly, indicating that he would do so, though he hoped it would not come to that. The other warriors began to move in a loose circle around the hut, scanning the area and testing the boundaries. Elias noticed their precision and coordination. They did not need to speak to communicate. Their movements were synchronized. He realized he was observing not just physical strength, but tactical intelligence. These were not mindless brutes. They were skilled, disciplined, and strategic. Elias decided to demonstrate his abilities as well. He walked carefully around the perimeter of the hut, showing the traps and stakes he had set. He lifted heavy stones and moved them to create additional barriers, signaling that he could adapt and protect the space if necessary. The alien woman watched closely, nodding slightly as if acknowledging his effort. The warrior's eyes followed every movement, evaluating, judging, learning. Minutes passed. The desert heat grew more intense, but Elias remained focused. He sensed the alien warriors were testing him, trying to determine whether he could be trusted, whether he could act honorably under pressure. Elias thought of the years he had survived alone in the desert, relying on ingenuity, observation, and patience. He realized that his survival skills were now more valuable than ever, not just for himself, but for the alien woman whose life he had saved. Suddenly, one of the warriors stepped closer to the alien woman, brushing a hand lightly over her shoulder. She did not flinch but made a subtle gesture that indicated acknowledgement and calm. Elias watched closely. The warriors were disciplined but not heartless. They respected her autonomy. This reassured him slightly, though he knew the situation remained dangerous. Elias decided to take a calculated risk. He gestured for the alien woman to step slightly aside, then began to show the warriors some of his daily survival techniques. He demonstrated how he collected and filtered water, how he hunted small desert creatures using traps, and how he created fire with minimal materials. The warriors observed intently, their glowing eyes scanning every detail. He moved carefully, aware that any sudden motion could be misinterpreted as aggression. The alien woman hummed softly in approval, and the warrior leader made a small gesture of recognition, indicating that Elias' skills were impressive. The other warriors murmured among themselves, the sound low and resonant, almost musical. Elias realized that they were communicating through subtle vibrations and hums, a language of instinct and experience. The alien woman began to demonstrate some of her own abilities. She moved with surprising speed and grace, her gestures precise and deliberate. Elias watched in awe as she manipulated small objects with uncanny skill, showing hints of abilities beyond human strength. The warriors observed closely, nodding in approval. Elias sensed that this was a demonstration of trust. By showing him her skills, she acknowledged him as a worthy ally. Hours passed in this silent exchange. The alien warriors had not left, nor had they attacked. Elias began to understand that their presence was both a test and a lesson. They were teaching him patience, observation, and respect, while he was demonstrating compassion, courage, and ingenuity. Each side was learning from the other, slowly building a bridge of understanding. As the sun reached its peak, the alien woman pointed toward the horizon and then to Elias, making a series of quick gestures. Elias tried to interpret them. He realized she was warning him of a potential threat approaching from the dunes, distant but significant. He glanced toward the horizon and saw a faint shimmer, the outline of creatures moving with speed and purpose. They were not the warriors, they were something else entirely. Elias' pulse quickened. The desert was full of dangers, but this was something new. The alien warriors noticed it too, their glowing eyes shifting toward the approaching figures. They exchanged brief, sharp gestures among themselves, and the alien woman hummed a low warning. Elias understood immediately. The moment of calm might be ending. He acted quickly, gathering his tools and preparing defenses. The stakes and torches he had set earlier were ready, but he needed to anticipate movement and create space for maneuvering. The alien warriors moved in formation, not advancing aggressively, but positioning themselves strategically around the hut. Elias realized they were preparing to protect both him and the alien woman if the approaching threat proved hostile. The shimmering figures grew closer, and Elias could now make out their shapes. They were smaller than the warriors, but moved with surprising speed and coordination. Elias assessed the situation. He was outnumbered in skill, but he had the advantage of preparation, knowledge of the terrain, and the support of the alien warriors. The desert, harsh as it was, had provided him with tools and tactics. The alien woman gestured for Elias to stay close, then moved forward slightly, demonstrating readiness. Elias nodded, understanding that she trusted him to act with judgment and courage. The approaching creatures were almost upon them now, kicking up clouds of sand in their wake. Elias tightened his grip on his spear, ready to act. When the figures reached the edge of the hut's perimeter, the alien warriors stepped forward as one, their synchronized movements striking and precise. Elias felt a mix of fear and awe. These beings were magnificent, disciplined, and lethal in appearance, yet there was a clear purpose. They were protectors, not aggressors. Elias' heart swelled with respect for them and for the bond he had begun to form with the alien woman. The shimmering figures paused, sensing the presence of the alien warriors and the small human defender. Elias realized that the desert was holding its breath. For a moment, everything was still. The wind, the creatures, the hum of the alien woman's energy, the sharp, precise movements of the warriors. Time seemed suspended, each second stretched into eternity. Elias knew that this moment would define the next hours. He had to remain calm, observe carefully, and act with intelligence. He raised his spear slightly, not in aggression but as a signal of readiness. The alien woman hummed softly, her glow intensifying, a signal of strength and confidence. The warriors moved slightly, creating a protective circle, their glowing eyes scanning every angle. Then the lead figure of the approaching threat stepped forward, a curious shimmer marking its presence. Elias studied it carefully. It seemed intelligent, aware, but uncertain. He realized that a simple display of courage, skill, and morality might convince it not to attack, or at least slow it down until he and the alien warriors could act effectively. Elias took a step forward, keeping his hands visible, and gestured toward the alien woman, then to himself, then to the approaching figure. He was showing a chain of trust. He had helped her, he was defending her, and he sought peace. The alien woman joined him in the gesture, extending her hands slightly, her glow a radiant affirmation. The lead figure hesitated, its movement slowing. Elias sensed that it was evaluating him just as the warriors had. This was a moment of interspecies communication without words, a test of character and courage. Elias held his ground, showing calmness, intelligence, and respect. Minutes passed, the tension building with every heartbeat. The desert wind shifted, carrying the faint sound of distant sand and movement. Elias could feel the bond between him and the alien woman strengthening, their shared understanding and trust becoming a silent shield against the unknown. Finally, the lead figure retreated slightly, followed by the others. Elias exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. The alien warriors relaxed slightly, their synchronized movements loosening but still alert. The alien woman hummed softly, a sound of gratitude and recognition. Elias realized that the moment of immediate danger had passed, but the lessons of courage, compassion, and intelligence would shape the days to come. The desert stretched endlessly around them, harsh and unforgiving, yet in that small circle there was balance. Elias knew that he had survived not only because of skill and preparation, but because of his humanity, compassion, courage, and the ability to understand and respect another being's needs. As the sun reached its zenith, Elias and the alien woman shared a quiet moment of connection. No words were spoken, yet understanding flowed between them. The alien warriors observed silently, their presence a reminder that respect and honor could transcend species, language, and culture. Elias realized that this encounter was not the end, but the beginning. The desert had tested him, the alien woman had trusted him, and the warriors had judged him. In the process, he had shown that humanity's greatest strength lay not in weapons or power, but in the courage to act morally, the intelligence to survive, and the compassion to connect with others, even those from distant worlds. And as the desert heat shimmered across the dunes, Elias felt a deep, unspoken bond forming. He was no longer just a man surviving in isolation. He was part of a larger story, one of courage, trust, and the quiet heroism that defined what it meant to be human. The desert heat hung heavy over the small hut, but the tension that had gripped Elias the previous morning had shifted into a more cautious curiosity. The alien warriors had not left. They remained around the perimeter, their glowing eyes scanning the sand and sky, their weapons at the ready, yet there was no aggression in their posture. Elias had learned to read subtle signs in the desert, and he could feel that these beings were no longer hostile. They were observing, analyzing, deciding. The alien woman moved beside him, her strength returning steadily. She had recovered enough to stand without support, her glowing skin pulsing with energy that Elias could feel in the quiet hum she emitted. Though he still could not understand her words, her gestures had become easier to interpret. She pointed to the warriors, then to him, then toward the horizon, indicating that these beings were her protectors and that their presence was tied directly to her well-being. Elias nodded slowly, acknowledging the unspoken explanation. He had survived harsh deserts and brutal isolation, but this was a challenge unlike any before. He had to navigate the unknown, not only the alien woman's needs but also the customs and perceptions of her people. One mistake could ignite conflict, yet he knew that patience, observation, and respect could turn danger into opportunity. He gestured toward the alien woman again, drawing a line in the sand that connected him to her, and then extending the line toward the warriors. He was attempting to communicate that his intentions were honorable and that he sought no harm. The alien woman responded with a series of quick, precise gestures which he mimicked as best he could. The warrior leader paused, watching closely, before giving a small nod. Elias felt a flicker of relief. This was the first acknowledgement of his understanding. For the next few hours, Elias demonstrated more of his survival skills. He showed how he collected water from underground reservoirs, how he stored it to prevent evaporation, and how he could improvise tools from scraps of metal and stone. The alien warriors circled, observing every detail. Their glowing eyes followed his hands, noting efficiency, technique, and intelligence. Elias realized that these beings were assessing him not merely as a threat, but as a being capable of skill, thought, and honor. The alien woman moved among the warriors, her gestures deliberate and commanding. They responded instantly, forming a protective ring around her and Elias. Elias sensed that she had authority over them and that their loyalty was unwavering. This was no ordinary alien clan. They were disciplined, intelligent, and bound by a strict code of honor. Elias respected their dedication and began to understand that their presence was both a challenge and a shield. Elias decided to engage further. He began building a small contraption from scraps he had gathered, a simple device that could catch water more efficiently than his current method. The alien warriors watched, their postures relaxed but alert. The alien woman gestured for him to continue, her glow brightening slightly with approval. Elias felt a sense of connection, a silent acknowledgement that his ingenuity was valued. As the contraption took shape, one of the warriors stepped closer, observing his movements intently. Elias kept his hands open, avoiding sudden gestures, and continued working. He demonstrated how each part functioned, how water could be collected and stored. The warrior leader made a subtle movement, as if indicating understanding. Elias realized that the warrior was not only learning, but also assessing the logic and intelligence behind human methods. The alien woman hummed softly, a sound that seemed to resonate with the surrounding warriors. Elias felt a wave of calm pass over him. This small sound, this simple vibration, had a profound effect on the group. It was as if the alien woman's presence and communication were not only guiding Elias, but also harmonizing the warrior's behavior. He marveled at the subtle power of trust and understanding across species. The desert sun climbed higher and the heat intensified, but the focus remained. Elias continued to demonstrate his methods, showing how he could create shelter, purify water, and store food efficiently. The alien warriors' attention never wavered. Their discipline was impressive. Elias realized that they valued intelligence and effort just as much as strength and skill. The desert had tested him for years, but now it was teaching him lessons in diplomacy, respect, and cooperation. As the day wore on, the alien woman began demonstrating her own abilities. She moved with speed and precision, manipulating small objects and creating patterns in the sand that seemed to have meaning. Elias watched closely, understanding that these gestures were part of her communication, but also a demonstration of skill. The warriors observed her movements with approval, acknowledging her competence and authority. Elias began to appreciate the depth of their culture, the way skill, respect, and hierarchy intertwined. Elias felt a shift in the atmosphere. The warriors were no longer just observers, they were participants in this delicate exchange. They began to interact with him, offering small gestures of acknowledgement, subtle signs of approval. Elias responded carefully, showing respect and understanding. The alien woman's glow intensified as if recognizing his efforts. He realized that he had earned a degree of trust, not through words, but through action, intelligence, and moral courage. Suddenly, a distant sound caught Elia's attention, the faint echo of movement across the desert sands. He glanced toward the horizon, noting the shimmering heat waves that hinted at approaching figures. The alien woman's glow dimmed slightly, and she gestured toward the distant shapes. Elias understood immediately. Another potential threat was approaching. The alien warriors shifted positions, their movements precise and coordinated. They formed a tighter perimeter around the hut, their glowing blades at the ready. Elias tightened his grip on his spear, aware that he was now part of a protective formation. The alien woman stepped beside him, her presence calm but alert. He could feel her energy, a faint hum that resonated with courage and focus. The approaching figures grew closer, and Elias could see their shapes more clearly. They were smaller than the warriors, moving quickly across the dunes, but their intent was clear. Elias realized that his quick thinking and the presence of the alien warriors might be the only things keeping them at bay. He felt a surge of determination. He would not fail, not now. He gestured toward the alien woman, then to the approaching figures, attempting to convey peace and understanding. The alien woman mirrored his gestures, reinforcing the message. The warriors remained vigilant, ready to act, but not yet aggressive. Elias sensed that communication, through action, gesture, and understanding, could prevent conflict. The lead figure of the approaching group stepped forward, pausing at the edge of the warriors' perimeter. Elias observed carefully. It seemed intelligent, aware, and cautious. He realized that these beings were evaluating him just as the warriors had. This was a test, a challenge to his character and courage. He stood tall, showing calmness and readiness without aggression. The alien woman hummed softly, and the lead figure hesitated further. Elias interpreted the sound as a signal of trust and protection. He held his ground, demonstrating that he would defend both her and the hut if necessary, but also that he sought peace. The desert seemed to hold its breath as the moment stretched, each second loaded with uncertainty and potential. Finally, the lead figure made a subtle gesture, a sign of recognition. Elias felt a wave of relief. The other figures behind it slowed, their movements cautious but controlled. The alien warriors relaxed slightly, though their attention remained sharp. Elias realized that the immediate danger had been diffused, not by force, but by intelligence, courage, and moral clarity. The alien woman gestured toward Elias, then to the warriors, then back at the desert. Elias understood. They were signaling that trust had been established, that his actions had been acknowledged, and that the desert, harsh as it was, could be navigated successfully through respect, ingenuity, and courage. He felt a deep sense of connection, a recognition that humanity's strength lay not only in survival but in moral action and intelligence. The day wore on, the sun blazing overhead, and Elias worked alongside the alien woman and the warriors. Together, they reinforced the hut's defenses, organized water storage, and improved shelter. The alien warriors observed and sometimes participated, their glowing eyes assessing every action. Elias felt a profound respect for their discipline and intelligence, recognizing parallels between their values and his own. By mid-afternoon, the desert seemed quieter, the immediate threats having receded. Elias and the alien woman shared a moment of calm, sitting near the small fire he had maintained. Though they could not speak, their gestures and shared understanding conveyed gratitude, trust, and mutual respect. The alien warriors remained in the distance, their posture relaxed but alert, signaling that the bond established was acknowledged and valued. Elias realized that his simple act of compassion, the decision to give water to a dying alien woman, had led to this extraordinary moment. He had survived threats, built trust, and demonstrated the strength of human morality and intelligence. The alien warriors had not only judged him but had begun to respect him. This was a triumph of understanding, courage, and ingenuity. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the dunes, Elias and the alien woman rose together. She gestured toward the desert and then back to him, as if acknowledging that their journey, though far from over, had reached a new stage. Elias nodded, feeling a quiet pride and connection that transcended language, species, and culture. The desert wind shifted, carrying the faint hum of the alien woman and the silent presence of the warriors. Elias understood that he was part of something larger now, a story that spanned worlds, cultures, and species. His actions, guided by compassion and intelligence, had created trust and respect where fear and misunderstanding could have ruled. And as the shadows lengthened and the first stars appeared in the desert sky, Elias felt a sense of purpose he had never known. He was no longer simply a man surviving in the harsh desert. He was a bridge between worlds, a demonstration of humanity's strength through courage, morality, and ingenuity. The desert night had fallen, and the stars shone brightly over the dunes, a glittering canopy above the quiet hut. Elias sat near the fire, his body tired from the long hours of tension and preparation, but his mind was alert. He felt a strange sense of anticipation, as if the desert itself held its breath. The alien woman sat nearby, her glow faint but steady, and the alien warriors remained around the perimeter, vigilant but calm. The trust that had grown over the past day now seemed tangible, a delicate bond stretched across species, space, and understanding. Elias glanced at the alien woman. Though she could not speak his language, her gestures had become clearer. She moved with confidence now, her posture strong, her eyes glowing softly. He had come to recognize her signals, the subtle flick of her fingers, the pulse of her skin, the hums that resonated like music in the air. She had survived, and her strength now radiated outward, influencing the warriors around her. The warrior leader stepped forward, its presence commanding yet composed. It made a series of deliberate gestures toward Elias. He studied them carefully. Unlike before, when every movement was an evaluation, these gestures were now invitations, instructions, and signs of acknowledgement. The alien woman stepped beside him, nodding slightly, urging him to respond. Elias took a deep breath and began to mirror the gestures, showing understanding, respect, and cooperation. Minutes passed, the only sounds the desert wind and the soft hum of the alien woman. Elias noticed a subtle shift among the warriors. Their postures relaxed slightly, their glowing blades lowering, their coordinated movements less tense. Elias felt a cautious optimism. His actions, his patience, and his moral courage had begun to forge an alliance, not only with the alien woman but with her protectors as well. Suddenly, one of the warriors stepped forward and placed a small device on the sand between Elias and the alien woman. The device emitted a faint glow and a low hum. Elias observed it carefully. It seemed to be a communicator or translator of sorts, a tool that could bridge the gap between species. He nodded, understanding that this was both a gift and a test, a way for the warriors to see how he would engage with new technology thoughtfully. Elias reached out and touched the device, and it hummed in response. He felt a connection, not just technical but symbolic, a shared understanding, a mutual recognition that intelligence, adaptability, and respect mattered across worlds. The alien woman mirrored his gesture, her glow pulsing brighter, acknowledging the significance. The warrior leader stepped back, observing, satisfied. Elias realized that this moment marked a turning point. The desert had tested him, and he had passed. The alien woman began to gesture again, this time toward the horizon. Elias followed her movements carefully. He understood they were preparing to leave, returning to their clan or settlement. The warriors would accompany her for now, but the bond between them and Elias would remain. He felt a mixture of relief, pride, and awe. The desert had been harsh and unforgiving, yet it had revealed something profound, the strength of human compassion and intelligence. Elias gathered some supplies, offering them to the alien woman. Though she did not speak, her gestures indicated gratitude. She touched his arm lightly, a simple, profound acknowledgement. The warriors watched, their expressions unreadable but respectful. Elias felt that this small act, the saving of a life, the demonstration of morality, had resonated far beyond what he had imagined. As they prepared to move, the desert air shifted. A faint wind carried the scent of distant rocks and sand, and Elias sensed that new challenges would come in time. Yet he was not afraid. He had faced danger, uncertainty, and judgment, and had acted with courage and integrity. The alien woman's presence, the warrior's respect, and the trust they had placed in him were proof that humanity's qualities could shine even in the harshest environments. The lead warrior gestured for Elias to follow briefly, and he stepped forward cautiously. The alien woman led the way, and the other warriors flanked them, creating a protective formation as they moved across the dunes. Elias observed everything, noting patterns, movement, and subtle signals. He understood that this journey, though temporary, was an opportunity to strengthen alliances and learn more about a world beyond his own. Hours passed as they walked. The desert night was silent except for the soft crunch of sand underfoot. Elias remained vigilant but also attentive to the alien woman and her warriors. He noticed the intricate ways they communicated through gestures, hums, and body language. Elias mirrored these gestures subtly, showing awareness and respect. The warriors observed him carefully, their initial suspicion replaced by measured approval. At one point, the alien woman stopped and gestured toward a distant rock formation. Elias followed her gaze and understood that this was a point of significance for her clan. The warriors knelt briefly in a display of reverence, and Elias mirrored the gesture as best he could, showing that he understood their customs, even without fully knowing them. The alien woman's glow brightened, acknowledging his effort. They continued across the dunes, moving toward the horizon where the desert met rocky plateaus. Elias realized that this journey was more than physical, it was symbolic. He had bridged the gap between species, demonstrated the strength of human morality, and earned respect through courage, intelligence, and compassion. Each step forward reinforced the understanding that humanity's qualities could resonate across worlds. Eventually, they reached the edge of a plateau overlooking a valley that glimmered with alien structures. The alien woman gestured for Elias to remain behind briefly, then turned to address her warriors. Elias watched as they formed a semicircle, listening attentively. Though he could not hear the words, he could sense the intensity of their focus and the importance of the moment. It was a lesson in leadership, respect, and duty. The alien woman returned to Elias, gesturing for him to approach. She indicated that the warriors would remain to escort her, but that he was free to stay. Elias felt a mix of emotions, relief, pride, and a sense of accomplishment. He understood that he had been tested in ways far beyond survival. He had been evaluated on morality, ingenuity, courage, and the ability to connect across species. He nodded to the alien woman, offering a gesture of farewell and respect. She responded with a subtle touch to his arm, a soft hum, and a glowing pulse. Elias felt the bond between them, unspoken but profound. The warriors formed a line, ready to depart with her, and Elias stepped back, giving them space. He watched as they moved gracefully across the plateau, their silhouettes illuminated by the moonlight. Once they disappeared from view, Elias stood alone, yet he did not feel lonely. The desert stretched endlessly before him, but it was no longer simply a place of survival. It was a landscape of opportunity, connection, and discovery. He had proven that humanity's greatest strengths were not just in physical endurance, but in moral courage, intelligence, and the willingness to act compassionately. Elias returned to his hut, the fire still faintly glowing from earlier, and prepared for the night. He reflected on the events of the past day and night. The dying alien woman, the disciplined warriors, the tests of courage and patience. He understood now that his choices had mattered, that simple acts of kindness and ingenuity could ripple across worlds. The desert, harsh and unyielding, had revealed the best of humanity. As he lay down to rest, Elias gazed up at the star-filled sky. He felt a quiet pride and humility, knowing that he had been part of something extraordinary. He had acted with courage, intelligence, and compassion, earning trust and respect across species. The alien woman and her warriors had shown him that honor and morality were universal concepts, recognized even by those far beyond human understanding. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, it brought a sense of peace. Elias dreamed not of danger, but of possibility, of new connections, of trust built across vast distances, and of humanity's potential to shine in even the harshest environments. The desert wind whispered softly around his hut, carrying with it the memory of the alien woman's hum and the silent presence of the warriors. When he awoke the next morning, the desert was quiet and still. There was no sign of the alien woman or her warriors, but their presence lingered in his thoughts and actions. Elias prepared for another day in the harsh sands, but he did so with renewed confidence and understanding. He knew that courage, morality, and ingenuity were his greatest tools, far more powerful than any weapon or armor. The desert sun rose slowly, casting long shadows across the dunes. Elias walked to the edge of his hut and surveyed the landscape. He felt a connection to the world beyond himself, to the life he had touched and the bonds he had forged. The alien woman and her warriors were out there, alive and aware of his actions, carrying with them the story of a human who had chosen compassion over fear, courage over hesitation. And in that vast, unforgiving desert, Elias smiled. He had faced the unknown, survived challenges that tested the very core of his being, and emerged stronger, wiser, and connected to something greater than himself. Humanity, he realized, was defined not just by survival, but by the choices it made, the courage it showed, and the connections it built. As the sun climbed higher, Elias prepared to face the day, carrying with him the lessons of the past, the quiet pride of moral courage, and the knowledge that even a single act of kindness could resonate across worlds. He was no longer just a man surviving in isolation. He was a witness to the power of humanity, a bridge between worlds, and a testament to the strength that compassion, intelligence, and courage could create. The desert stretched endlessly, but Elias felt ready. Whatever challenges awaited, he would face them with the same heart, the same ingenuity, and the same unwavering moral courage that had carried him through the night. The story of the dying alien woman, the disciplined warriors, and the man who gave water to a stranger would live on in memory, a tale of humanity's quiet heroism shining in the vast, alien sands. And as the desert wind shifted and the first distant hum of life stirred across the dunes, Elias knew that this was only the beginning. Humanity's potential, its courage, and its compassion were limitless. And in a universe filled with unknowns, those qualities were its greatest weapons, its truest strength, and its most enduring legacy.